Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to RotoBaller Radio. I'm your host, Anthony Aniano. Happy to be with you here as we take a look at the fantasy football waiver wire for Week 8 of your fantasy football season. Folks, don't forget, head over to RotoBaller.com right now. Sign up today for that NFL Premium Pass or any Premium Pass, NBA, MLB, NHL, whatever you're looking for. RotoBaller.com has you covered. Sign up right now. Use the promotional code ACES and save at checkout. Don't forget, like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel and download the RotoBaller app. It's free. 6 great sports, DFS season-long free and premium subscriptions, whatever you're looking for. That RotoBaller app has you covered. All right. As always, guys, recording the early waiver wire video on Sunday night right before kickoff of the Sunday night matchup. So obviously things can change. Players can jump on this waiver wire list during the course of that Sunday night or Monday night game. That's why we call it the early waiver wire. Using Yahoo roster percentages as our sounding board, keeping it to players 50% or less rostered. Okay, no bye weeks in Week 8. We get a little bit of reprieve after the tough bye weeks of Week 7. We get a nice Week 8, no teams on a bye. Injuries seem to be minimal at this point on a Sunday. Obviously, things pop up, like Kieran Williams on last Sunday. You didn't think that was anything serious, and here he is now on the IR by the middle of the week that just passed. So things develop as the week goes on. Deshaun Watson played only a short bit, left again, concussion, head injury, cleared concussion protocol. Browns kept him out. Bijan Robinson, weird situation, didn't feel well. Barely played, really didn't even get a carry. Jerome Ford did leave the game for the Cleveland Browns with an ankle situation. DK Metcalf, a late scratch with hip and rib injuries, missing his first game of the season, of his career actually, in Week 7. So we'll start at the quarterback position, and if you're in a Superflex 2QB format, this is maybe where you need to go, and 2 players to be mindful. Number 1, the top quarterback to add, if you need one right now, is Gardner Minshew, only 8% rostered. There might be other guys available in leagues of yours, but for me, Gardner Minshew's the best one under that 50% roster number. Nice game on Sunday, 305 passing yards, 15 of 23, 2 passing touchdowns, rushes for 2 touchdowns as well. You're not going to get that every week, but he'll throw the ball. He has no problems throwing the ball. We'll talk about Josh Downs in a little bit. Hit Michael Pittman for the big play. So Gardner Minshew will make plays. He'll make mistakes, but he'll also make plays. Finished with 31 fantasy points. Indianapolis Colts going up against New Orleans Saints in Week 7. My second quarterback, and he's a little bit below Gardner Minshew, but in a 2QB format, Tyrod Taylor needs to be on rosters. Let's just be very real about this. He has played better than Daniel Jones. That's just a fact. Okay, 3% rostered on Yahoo. 18 of 29, 279, 2 touchdowns. Gets Darren Waller involved. Saquon Barkley scores a touchdown, hits Jalen Hyatt with a big play. Okay, they didn't score as much as you would like. Giants finished with only 14 points. Saquon fumbled near the goal line near the end. You thought they were going to finish with 21. But Tyrod Taylor has done a better job with that makeshift offensive line than Daniel Jones has. That's just a fact. Going to be interesting to see what the Giants decide to do when Daniel Jones is healthy. Now, at the running back position, it's thin. It's not a pretty list, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll start with Ezekiel Elliott of the New England Patriots. 46% rostered. The highest rostered player on my entire list here today. But he's under 50%. People dropped him. He has at least 10 fantasy points in each of his last 2 games, or averaging 10 fantasy points in each of his last 2 games. He's gotten a touchdown each of the last 2 games. From a running aspect, he's essentially splitting carries at this point with Ramondre Stevenson. This past week in Week 7, Ezekiel Elliott, 11 carries, 31 yards, and that touchdown. Finished with 9.1 fantasy points. Ramondre only had 9 carries. Ramondre's outperforming him, though, in PPR formats because Ramondre Stevenson is also the pass-catching back in New England. Zeke Elliott, 46% rostered. Probably don't need him in Week 8. You might not need any of these running backs in Week 8 if you stayed healthy. But as you prepare for big bye weeks in Week 9 and Week 10, you may want to take a look ahead and shore that up. Other running backs available. Jerome, like we mentioned, Ford out potentially with the ankle. Left the game after having a big run. Okay, 1% rostered is Pierre Strong of the Cleveland Browns. Now, even if Ford misses time, it's Kareem Hunt next. then it's Strong. But Strong, I wanted to mention, he did get 8 carries for 25 yards. He is 1% rostered at Seattle next week. That's a deep league play. I totally get it. Not somebody I'd add in a 10 or 12 teamer, but if you're in a 14 or 16 team league, Pierre Strong may see that, 8 to 12 carries if Ford misses time for the Cleveland Browns. The Rams situation is a mess. Let's acknowledge it. Kieran Williams is going to be out for a while, and what you essentially saw was close to a split between Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson leads the way there, though, 24% rostered, 18 carries, 61 yards, and did get the rushing touchdown, finishing with 13.6 fantasy points. And then Royce Freeman, 29% rostered, 12 carries, 66 yards, did get a catch as well. So it was close. Henderson outperformed. Henderson got the goal line work. Henderson, the running back I prefer of the two going forward. And finally at the running back position, Devin Singletary of the Houston Texans. On a bye in Week 7. So I didn't mention him last week, but he had a very nice Week 6 game. I'm sorry, Week 7 game. Week 6, I'm getting confused. Week 6 into Week 7, I didn't mention him. Okay, Week 7 he had the bye week. But nonetheless, Devin Singletary, 14% rostered. Back in Week 6, got it right this time, 12 carries, 58 yards. 1 catch for 4. Okay, finished with about 7.2 fantasy points. But the point I'm making is he outperformed Dameon Pierce, who's been awful this year. In that same matchup, Dameon Pierce, 13 carries, 34 yards. Right now, Devin Singletary is the better running back on that Houston Texans roster. So in Week 6, Singletary outperformed them. I'm trying to get my weeks right. Week 7, they're on a bye. Week 8, I expect more work for Devin Singletary going forward. He's not your RB2, but if you're desperate for a flex play, Devin Singletary is in that conversation. He's only 14% rostered. Texans on the road at the Carolina Panthers. At the wide receiver positions, Josh Downs stole the show for the Indianapolis Colts, right? 35% rostered. Biggest beneficiary of Gardner Minshew at quarterback. 6 targets, 5 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. 23.5 fantasy points. Second straight game for Downs with a touchdown. And 13 or more fantasy points for Josh Downs in his last 3 games. Kendrick Bourne of the New England Patriots repeats essentially what he did last week. He goes 7 targets, 6 for 63, and a touch in the Patriots' upset victory over the Buffalo Bills. 16.3 fantasy points. They're going to have to throw to keep up with Miami next week. Will New England? So Kendrick Bourne should be heavily involved once again. He's only 26% rostered, and over the last 2 weeks, 16 catches on 18 targets, 152 yards, and a touchdown, a combined 35 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks in PPR formats. Other wide receivers to be mindful of, Michael Gallup of the Dallas Cowboys, all coming off the bye week. Back in Week 6, though, had 10 targets. He's got 21 targets in his last 3 games. They'll be at the Rams. And Jake Bobo, love the name, 0% rostered. Bobo with the touchdown this week. 4 catches, 61 yards, and a touch on 5 targets. He elevates. If Metcalf is going to miss any more time, everybody elevates. Bobo pays off, gets in the end zone. Tough matchup for the Seattle passing attack, though, against the Cleveland Browns in Week 8. And finally, if you need a tight end or two tight ends to be mindful of. Taysom Hill is back on the radar, ladies and gentlemen. Need to pay attention to him. He's only 9% rostered. This past week, not 5 carries, 18 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 4 receptions, 450 yards, finishing with 16.8 fantasy points. He's got 29 fantasy points over his last 2 games. I've been using him in tight end premium formats throughout the year. Now time to consider him in just normal scoring tight end formats against Indianapolis next week. And Dalton Kincaid, the rookie from the Buffalo Bills. We've waited for a while for Kincaid. He finally emerged, had a nice game this week against New England for Buffalo. Now, he's 42% rostered. Remember, people were drafting Dalton Kincaid as their tight end 1 if they decided to wait at the tight end position. Well, it seems like people have given up on that hope and dream, but maybe we're starting to see it now with the rookie. 8 targets, caught all 8 of them, 75 yards, 15.5 fantasy points for Dalton Kincaid. they go up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 8. Okay, so to recap, my top 5 waiver wire ads for Week 8 of your fantasy football season. Number 5, Devin Singletary, running back, Houston Texans. At number 4, Ezekiel Elliott, running back, New England Patriots. Number 3, Darrell Henderson, running back, Los Angeles Rams. At number 2, Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver, New England Patriots. And the number 1 ad of the week, wide receiver, Indianapolis Colts, Josh Downs. All right, everybody, give me a follow on Twitter at @AnianoFantasy. Make sure you tune in all week long to RotoBaller Radio on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Josh Hayes, Real Talk Graph, and myself throughout the week, so make sure you take advantage of that. Like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time right here on RotoBaller Radio.